Mayor Eric Adams of New York City indicted. What the hell is going on in your trash city?
There's that meme that goes around from The Onion. It's from de Blasio, and it goes like, not so easy being a shit mayor, is it?
Done with politics.
He's got the chain, he's got the sick oversized tees. The one thing he doesn't have yet is a sick pair of shades or like a sick pair of Ray-Bans.
Zuckerberg's thinking here, which I think he's wrong. The internet is like a great place to be all the time, when in fact on net, it's totally not a great place to be.
Cards Against Humanity themselves have been accused of racism and sexism by former workers. So don't throw stones at houses of cards, I guess.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the pod. We've got Matt in the house today for two things.
Yeah.
One, I mean, obviously Idol's coming up, and Matt's the producer. He wanted to say, and I was like, you know what? Granted. So Matt's going to be hanging out with us in the chat and giving his opinion. Though I think today, yeah, we'll see what happens. And I'm excited for today with the quarterfinals of Pirate Idol coming up. So stay tuned for that. Again, classically at the end of the episode, I'll talk a little bit more about how Pirate Idol is going to go on moving forward now that we've exited the sort of round one. Stay tuned for our Polymarket segment. We're going to talk a little bit about the VP debate, and let's just start the show, my friends. Obviously, the thing that we have to talk about is the first thing we have to talk about is Eric Adams, Mayor Eric Adams of New York City, indicted for some stuff that we're going to talk about right now, led by our New York City guy, Matt Marlinski. What the hell is going on in your trash city? Break it down, sir.
New York City, man. It's just another embarrassment for the city. But I guess no one really likes the mayor anyway. So, I mean, it's just kind of continuation of like the bullshit you hear from mayors. But we got to fix things around here. So Eric Adams became the first sitting mayor of New York City to get indicted. He got indicted of 5 federal charges, including wire fraud, soliciting campaign contributions from a foreign national, mainly Turkey. But I've also heard other countries. They raided Gracie Mansion, which is where the mayor in New York City lives. And at the moment, we don't really know kind of what's going on. I think right now we're kind of parsing through the confusion of it all. Is it a real thing? Is it like a Trumpian kind of like hit thing? But what's clear is that Adams doesn't do himself any favors, right? So he's openly talked badly about the Biden administration, mainly for the migrant crisis, which in front of me, the city has spent $5.5 billion on the migrant crisis as of August, which is f***ing crazy. You know, he was elected as like the cop mayor. He was actually, when he got elected, he kind of hit the perfect time in election season. Because remember, like Andrew Yang was running for mayor of New York City, and he actually was in the lead at one point. But like right when like New York City really started to go downhill, that's when Adams ascended as like, I'm the cop candidate.
Yeah, Adams was the Democrat who is willing to say that crime is bad, which was hard to come by.
An independent moderator like me, I was like, that sounds cool. What I always kind of knew, I never really liked him anyway, but like I was like, well, that sounds better than the rest of the trash stuff that other people are saying, like Maya Wiley and all of them, who are like, oh, my liberal friends love. She was crazy. But also, like, he hasn't really fixed anything, right? Like, the city's still bad, the cops are still bad. The governor of New York, Kathy Hochul, called the National Guard on the subway a few months ago. So like of a crime. So like you haven't even done that right. So people are coming for him. AOC called for his resignation mere hours before the news hit. And one last thing is like whether or not we think like it's a hit piece or they're coming after him, like his campaign definitely is in disarray. So like there's been 4 major resignations in the past few months. The chancellor of NYC's public schools, the health commissioner, who we found out was like having parties during COVID.
Yeah,
fucking asshole,
bitch.
like Newsom kind of, you assholes.
It was like he's the orgy guy, right?
Yeah. He was doing all the COVID spreading. And then
he was spreading more than COVID.
Chief counsel and then the NYPD commissioner also resigned. So like, there's just chaos going on. Maybe they're like getting out to save themselves. There's that meme that goes around from The Onion, and it's like actually kind of funny where it's like, it's from de Blasio, and it goes like, not so easy being a shit mayor, is it?
Yeah, that's the thing. So listen, ground floor, shitty mayor. Like he just is. Like we got to call a spade a spade. I think that right now what you see happening on the discourse side of things is you see people on the right wanting to defend Adams. And the reason they want to defend him is because Adams has been correctly diagnosing the problem of the migrant crisis in New York. And
he's right,
saying this is because the administration won't stop it and we can't handle it. That's been really politically disadvantageous for the Democrats. And so right-wing people are wanting to defend him right now. Left-wing people want to destroy him. One, for that reason. And then two, because what is his name? Jerome? What is the dude's name who's about to become, he's a public advocate. So this dude is called he's called a public advocate. Jumaine Williams. So the public, I don't know New York City politics well enough to understand how the fuck this is happening, but if the mayor steps down, the public advocate steps up. He's Jumaine Williams. He is a pro-crime, like pro-illegal immigration, anti-cop, hardcore, far left, open socialist. So it's no surprise that AOC wants to get rid of Adams so her literal socialist friend can rise to power. And these are the things that make it impossible for us, I think, to have an honest conversation about what's going on here. Now, I think the honest conversation would look something like, bro definitely committed some kind of a crime. I think that from what I'm seeing, it looks like about $100,000 of bribes of some kind, or at the very least illegal campaign contributions from a foreign government. And I think that they wouldn't go through all of this if there wasn't something there. Obviously innocent until proven guilty. In my gut, I think he's going to be guilty. The crime, however, I think is not worth all the theater that we're seeing around it. And it does feel politically motivated. That doesn't mean it's not a crime. It doesn't mean he shouldn't be punished, but I'm not going to have a hard time. I'm going to have a hard time defending him because I think he probably did it. And so he doesn't really deserve to be defended. And I think he was a shit mayor. And it's like, he came in, he's one of these guys. This is a new crop of politicians who are willing to say the right thing and then not do anything to fix the problem. I think this is slightly Trumpian, to be honest. I think about the immigration stuff in particular. Like, he didn't fix that problem, and he ran on that problem. And it obviously is a fraction. It's not nearly as bad as it is now under Biden, but he didn't fix it. You know, he said a lot about it. He got everyone all riled up by talking about it, and then he didn't do the work. So anyway, yeah, I think that the dude. I think Eric Adams probably did it. I think he'll probably resign or be forced out. I think the fucking Joker is going to rise up in the place of the Hamburglar. And those are your options. Your options are like centrist Democrat who's literally a criminal, or open socialist who wants to burn down the city. And that is like really the choice in every major American city. Is it's always a center left corrupt person and a far left crazy person. And it's like eventually someone's going to have to choose, like, maybe start entertaining the other party. There is another party in every one of these cities that we just never talk about.
I remember we covered on this very podcast a certain $1 million trash can unveiling where we speculated. I'm just saying, baby. We speculated about, powerful groups running the trash system in New York City, the mob, being the reason why no one had taken this step before. It's a little curious that Eric Adams, challenged the powers that be on that front. And now all of a sudden he gets indicted. I'm just saying, it's a little interesting.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is New York City. The other funny thing that you see online right now is the New York Times, like, pearl clutching. This is the first ever mayor in New York City indicted while in office. This is the city of Tammany Hall, of Boss Tweed. Like, this is famously a city that was built by corrupt Democrats. They're fucking corrupt. It's like they were corrupt in the 19th century. You have people paying for immigrants to come in and then basically bullying those immigrant groups, coercing those immigrant groups via all sorts of immigration benefits to vote for the Democrats. You then lead into the era of the mob, where the mob gets involved in politics and every other part of the city. Like, I think about writing about New York. Like, it's like, we're going to start maybe a New York City local politics vertical as we grow. It's sort of on the roadmap. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, do I have to worry about mob shit? Like, maybe it's like a weird, New York's a different beast than San Francisco, where, the people are idiots, but I think they're fundamentally harmless. It's like they're more stupid than evil. Some of them are pretty evil, but New York's a different thing. And yeah, I think that, like, there's like an FBI thing, there's a Biden administration thing, and then there's like a local politics thing, which is a whole other brutal battleground. And I think that probably the dude is not very smart, clearly based on the fact that he sacrificed everything for like $100,000 of bribes and then wrote about it, I think, on text and an email. So not a bright guy to begin with. And he's in a, dicey situation. Just, it's a politically fraught arena, so to speak. Brandon, what do you think?
One might say.
I don't know. Sad, I guess. I don't know. Like, is it a safe assumption that most local politicians are corrupt?
Yeah, I think so.
In New York.
Yeah,
if that's the case.
I've noticed it's center left. It's not the far left. At least, so in San Francisco, and now this is my other city that I know. I don't know as much, not nearly as much, but I know enough to know that the corruption tends to track center left. I don't know if that's true in every city. I imagine it would be closer to true because you'd be closer to entrenched power if you're on the center left. You'd be close to like decades and decades of power at that point. And I think that, as much as I can't stand someone like, let's say, obviously AOC in the Congress level, but if you want to get into local politics in San Francisco, someone like Dean Preston, he does not strike me as a criminal. He is awful. He's a bad person, but I'd actually be surprised if he was corrupt. Whereas like all of like Mohammed, whatever, Nehru, I forget his name, he ran like some part of the sanitation thing. Really like all the people around Breed have gone down for corruption, and she's technically like centrist Democrat. So far left by the rest of our standards, but in SF, technically a mod. So yeah, to your question, I think corruption in every city for sure.
Well, yes, that's why I thought it's interesting to relate it, because we always talk so much about San Francisco and LA and all these corrupt politicians. So I think we're just like stuck under the weight of this like awful politics everywhere. Like, and to be fair, like to a little bit to Adams, I mean, some of it's not all his fault in the sense, like, I'm sure he wanted to clean up the streets more, but he's stuck under the weight of these stupid prosecutors and DAs and laws that were passed under de Blasio, where now you can walk into Walgreens and steal $1,000 worth of stuff or less than 1,000 and not even get arrested.
Yeah.
So now when I go to the Walgreens, I have to wait for the goddamn deodorant every time behind a plastic barrier.
Yeah.
And like, it's a small example of like, yes, okay, fine. It's like my life ruined. No, but it's like this really interesting example of like, we talk about it all the time about like having a society, like a high trust society. Like I can't go into a store and just grab something anymore. I have to wait for a guy to come over to me because he hates his life. He's like, no, I got to do this for somebody. I don't want to do this. And it's like, why are we allowing this? And I've lived in New York City where that wasn't the thing. So now I'm like, why do we have to live like this?
Dude, I think that what they need to do, any of you have a Costco membership?
So I do. I just got one.
Love that company. Love Costco. Love my Costco membership. When you roll into a Costco, first of all, it's a peaceful utopia because you have to pay to get in, and it's a small amount of money, but it's enough to ward off most of the degenerates of society. Just like the concept of a paid membership thing, and also the concept of value that is based in bulk it requires like some base level, like you have to have like at least an IQ of 110 to understand why that's a good thing. And so that just weeds out a lot of trash people. So I love it already. I'm happy. On the way out of Costco, you got a lady there checking your receipt, and she looks at your stuff, and she does a little tally of what you have and what's on your receipt, and then she waves you on. And I can't imagine, again, because it's a peaceful utopia at Costco, I can't imagine that much crime happens there. But why not just be stationing, rather than all that plastic shit, why not just station, like literally hire a security guard and have someone checking receipts? And if you don't have the receipts for the shit that you're carrying out, you're not leaving the store.
Well, I think it's volume, but also they've tried, but these people don't get arrested. Like the people who are the security guards who fight back are the ones who end up getting arrested, right? We have in the more extreme example where the guy like choked the homeless person on the subway, and like he's the one who gets arrested, Daniel. Right? So now you have a society of people say, well, fuck it, why would I get involved? Like I have a security guard, I'm getting shit pay. Here you go, run out. And like some places like where my studio is in Midtown, it's like like the traffic that's going into CVS in like a 10-minute span. It's just so much,
Obviously we need new laws. I'm just thinking ahead, and it's like, I don't see a world where you can do this. We tend to think about our politics as if we're electing kings, And we're not. We're electing someone who's the head of this giant blob state apparatus, whether it's local or federal. And in this case, it's a local blob state in New York City, and also in San Francisco has a version, LA has a version, where there are just like layers and layers and layers, not only of elected officials, who they've all hired bureaucrats who are working underneath them. And it's like, you can't, one person who's elected to fix that problem is not enough. You need decades of people who are elected to do the common sense thing. And I just don't really see that. I don't see that coming. So we need to be able to protect ourselves and start thinking about ways to protect ourselves, unless there's some kind of maybe like a constitutional crisis or something. I mean, at some point, you know, when you can't rely on the state to protect you from criminals, that's a violation of the social contract. That's the entire reason that we allow ourselves to be taxed. And so if the state can't protect us and it can't protect the border, then it's not really it's no longer a legitimate government of the people, especially if the people want you to change it. I mean, clearly, when you poll people on should crime be illegal, it's like, yes, overwhelmingly. And so if it still can't happen, is this really our government?
Well, if you have a breakdown like that too in New York City, you can't even carry a gun with you. So, you know, you're kind of on your own, like go get fucked, you know?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, you know who has a gun? It's Kamala. Cackling away about the gun that she has. And honestly, go off, Queen.
I loved it.
You want to shoot a criminal in your house? Me too. Love that message for America. Let's be normalizing the concept of if someone comes into our house, they should die. I agree. Thank you. I'm glad we have bipartisan consensus on the topic of criminals in your house should just die. Thank you. Great. Phenomenal.
Listen, we might need to bring back Daddy Bloomberg for NYC. That's my last thing I'll say about NYC.
You think Bloomberg's the guy? So you're more of a Bloomberg than a Giuliani?
Well, they both did a good job. Well, actually, Giuliani was a kind of a mid mayor, but he did so well after 9/11, right? Then he was America's mayor.
Well, didn't he famously clean up? I mean, the crime plummeted under Giuliani.
He did, but he became like spectacular after 9/11. I mean, he was everywhere. So but Bloomberg, I mean, those 10 years, I mean, he was there. The streets were clean.
Giuliani brought down the mob in New York.
He did.
Yeah, and he created the RICO legal precedent.
Yeah. He seemed like a chill guy too. Now, listen, I think there's like a weirdness. He's maybe, I don't know, he's a little bit senile. He's getting crazy and kooky.
He jumped the shark. Yeah.
But he used to be like, he would like cross dress with the guys. You know, there were pictures of him in drag and stuff. Like, there are pictures of Giuliani in drag. He's a weird, like crazy New York Italian. And I love that for him. I love that for us. We must return. It is time to make New York great again. And that starts with a cross-dressing Italian mayor who's tough on crime. That's what we need.
That sounds fantastic. I would vote for that right now.
Brandon, please break down the story for me, the sort of evolution of Mark Zuckerberg's persona as according to, was it New Yorker magazine or New York Mag? Which one was it? Say it again. New York Times. Oh, New York Times. Right. New York Times. It was, he's done with politics. It was actually a pretty good piece that I read, kind of following his evolution, but break it down for us.
It's decent. I think in retro, like obvious though, right? Like we all knew he was sort of evolving into a more based version of his 2016 self. But the story is basically a reported feature that uses interviews with people who know Zuck and like leaked documents that they got from the CZI, the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, which he co-leads with his wife and Meta. And it, like you said, Solana just traces Zuckerberg's evolution from having like essentially no qualms about airing his mostly democratic politics back in like 2016, 2015 to being essentially disenfranchised with US politics. The piece actually, if people haven't read it, I was surprised to read the piece includes a fair amount about the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative. He seems, and his wife seems to have been sort of radicalized by what went down at the CZI during, sort of Floyd era, 2020 COVID.
Real.
Yeah. So in retrospect, again, not super surprising that this would be sort of a hotbed of activism, but the piece describes a sort of cancel culture within CZI, where basically a hard left contingent of employees kind of was allowed to grow and fester. And at one point they sort of, they started demanding to Priscilla that the initiative's money start going to abortion, protecting abortion rights. If you know anything about CZI, they sort of stick with education and science for the most part. During Floyd, a CZI employee called on Zuck to resign because he didn't censor Trump on Facebook, or he didn't, remove some of his posts.
Can you imagine an employee of yours demanding that you resign? Because
I think this was a turning point for Zuck.
Man.
He was really upset by that. Yeah. I mean, that would, obviously it would piss anybody off. The other side of the story for Zuck is, again, one I think we all know. It broadly gestures at how the media and politicians blamed him for Trump getting elected in 2016. Around that time, he was hauled up in front of Congress a few times, and generally both sides of the aisle were using him and what was then Facebook as a whipping boy. And often they were making competing demands, right? Like, so the Democrats wanted more censorship, Republicans wanted less. And then the last thing I noticed is that it does seem to indicate the piece that Zuck and Priscilla were pretty dismayed by the left's behavior in the aftermath of October 7th. So I think what you have now is he's really sort of disenchanted and disenchanted with and disappointed with U.S. politics. The piece is based on interviews with people that apparently he knows.
Does Zuck read Pirate Wires? Sounds like he's perfect.
I mean,
for us.
I don't. I know that his friends do. I think that, and there are other higher up people at Facebook who do for sure. I would love, Zuck, if you're listening, would love an interview with you. I saw, and I've seen a couple of notes of this now, that he has hired someone to help him with his image among more right-wing people.
Yeah, that's in the piece.
I think is, but I'd seen that before, even this piece. I think it's very interesting and it's very necessary. There's like a cynical read of it that sort of is what accounts for his sort of the American flag waving on 4th of July. He's out on his water skis, his new haircut, his new style. To me, that appeals to Zoomers, but that's sort of implicitly based because Zoomer men are more based, generally speaking. And I think it's inevitable and necessary. I've wrote a lot about this during the height of the crazy tech stuff back in like 2020. I thought, and my perspective then, and I was certainly, I think, proven out at this point, was that the industry was alienating the right, and it was doing so with all of the censorship. Really, I mean, you can't erase speech for half of the country and expect them to not hold it against you. Now, the problem with that is that the right in America was I don't think that either sides are particularly business friendly. The only natural bed of support you have in America for pro-business sentiment is the right. And it's like tech companies forgot they were companies, I think. And that puts them on a crash course with the left inevitably. And so, you spend all this time alienating the right, and then the left just eats you regardless of what you do for them eventually. And so now you have the situation certainly until recently, where tech had no friends at all. I think Elon has done a lot to change that a little bit. There's a lot more openness on the side of the right to just listen to tech people. And I think that Zuck is trying to now tap into that. And I think he's making a separate from maybe whatever his own sentiments are. There's a business thing here, which is he needs some friends somewhere. And if he doesn't make them, that company is long-term screwed. So I think that maybe that is what's happening there. I also think libertarianism is he said he was a libertarian now, or he's flirting with some kind of classically libertarian perspective, classically liberal perspective, he said, which is kind of a libertarianism thing. I had a friend when I was in my early 20s when we were working at Penguin. She used to say that I was a libertarian then. And she used to say that libertarians were just Republicans who wanted to get laid. And there is some truth to that.
I don't think it's wrong.
There is some truth to that. I think that the boy has just begun his journey. I think there's a lot ahead of him that we don't see coming. I think the politics in this country are getting wild and unpredictable because I don't know, like the left's laying down some crazy shit, and so you have to make choices. It's like what was the dude? Is it the one who's like sort of he arrived to anti-wokeness 10 years later or 8 years later and then was like, I invented it. the banker. What was his name?
Bill Ackman?
Bill Ackman?
That's the one. It's the Bill Ackman of it all. It's like the Bill Ackman effect. These people feel they feel persecuted and wronged by the very people they've supported for all of these years. I mean, we think about the Chan Zuckerberg initiative. That was a jobs program for hardcore left-wing people, and they turned on him for no reason, really.
Who could have thought? Who could have guessed
it?
Exactly.
It's a story of the scorpion and the frog. Live like a bitch, die like a bitch. To a certain extent, you deserve what came to you. But happy for the evolution back to sanity. I don't think you have to be, by the way, a Republican to be sane at this point. I really don't think that at all. I think there are obviously all sorts of Democrats who, there's a fight for what it means to be a centrist Democrat, which he seems to have abandoned completely and doesn't want anything to do with politics, and I get that. But there are plenty of tech people who are fighting for that Democratic center, that like, I can still be a Democrat and believe in a welfare state and help for the poor, and I love schools and roads and whatever, and the Republicans don't care about public spending. I think all of this stuff is in flux, but they're fighting for that to be the Democratic Party. I don't think the Democratic Party is going to be that. I think the Democratic Party is really just, at this point, you have two speeds. It's the party of the state, or it's the party of chaos. It's like the center is the state, and the base of that party is chaos. It's like pro-crime and whatever. And the Republicans, who knows? It's evolution. But Riley, what do you make as a Zoomer? Does Mark's evocative broccoli haircut, or it's like a sort of budding? It's like he's hinting at the Zoomer broccoli haircut.
Does that tempt you? A little bit, and I think the fact that it does means that there's a bit of potential in also another thing he's going to unveil soon, which is his Orion AR glasses. Because, he's got the chain, he's got the sick oversized tees comparing himself to Caesar. The one thing he doesn't have yet is a sick pair of shades or like a sick pair of Ray-Bans. And he's got that on hold for his new AR glasses. So I think, if anyone can make those look cool, because obviously they've, gotten a bit of mockery so far with the Apple Vision Pro guy waving his hands around, I think Zuck can make it look cool, because we have seen in real time that he knows what cool looks like. So I think there's a lot of potential there.
Brandon, didn't you have like a contrarian take on those glasses in general?
My contrarian take on the glasses are a prototype, first off. So there's actually a lot of cool new tech. I think that they've prototyped with this prototype. Like Riley said, it's called Orion. I saw yesterday, some videos about these AR glasses, and I was like, cool, whatever, Today I watched the video, and probably the coolest and most evocative part about these glasses is that there's a neural hookup, essentially. You control it with your gestures, with your eyes, with your voice, and then you wear a bracelet that it detects what your fingers are doing. Very minor finger movements. Like if I make a really sort of low key finger movement that looks like a scroll on my phone, like I'm scrolling my phone on my phone without the phone, the AR glasses will read that as a scroll in the lenses, right? So the other cool thing about this is that I was listening to what he said, and there's the way that the actual physics works is that there are tiny projectors in the frame of the glasses, and those frames project holograms onto the lenses, which are made up of, he says, nanoscale 3D structures, and they diffract the light. And this new, I think this is patented tech. It seems like these structures allow the holograms to be smaller, bigger, more in the distance, less in the distance. So, like, pretty cool tech, right? Especially because you can control it with your mind. I think that's a new thing. Again, though, it's just a prototype. They have like probably years to go. But my initial reaction was like, cool, this is like awesome. Like I obviously like wrote the white pill, and I'm into stuff like this. But I started thinking about it more, and it was like his vision for the future, which obviously this is a big bet on the future, right? Like he's going to be pouring tons of money into it. And so I think it's representative of the fact that he thinks that there will be a lot of consumers who want essentially their iPhone just to be always looking at their iPhone on their, like, instead of having your iPhone in your pocket, you're just seeing it all the time, right? And I don't think that I would hate that personally. I don't, I have my phone on Do Not Disturb more than I don't have it on Do Not Disturb. I mean, I don't like looking at my phone. I try to look at it as little as I possibly can. And as an assumption baked into, I think, Zuckerberg's thinking here, which I think he's wrong, is that the internet is like a great place to be all the time. When in fact on net, it's totally not a great place to be all the time. And I think he's unintentionally being a little bit dystopian here with this vision. I understand the whole, like it might be cooler to FaceTime, for example, with these glasses. That's fair. But I don't like, thinking about a world of people who are all wearing these glasses, who are just getting like constant like Coinbase notifications and like, whatever notifications, like scrolling down your screen. You're always getting text messages from people, right? And your boss is bothering you on Slack or whatever it is, right? Like that's not
wait, what?
That's just not something. Your boss pops up as a hologram, I just work. I like don't want that at all, and I don't actually see. And that for me, if I'm being realistic about what the internet is, it's you can't ignore that. That's a big part of it, And so I don't think I'll be getting the glasses. And using it in any way other than like maybe there's games or something you could play or something that might be fun.
Yeah, I think to a certain extent, Facebook in its first incarnation, just regular old early 2000s Facebook, was virtual reality. It was our first experience with virtual reality in that you were living some part of your life virtually. Obviously, there were message boards and things like that, but this is the first time this became a really, this penetrated society broadly, this idea that you would spend a non-trivial amount of your day online connecting with important people in your life. That totally evolved into like newsfeed slop and things like this. It's really, we've drifted very far away from the original vision, which was connecting with people that you loved on a day-to-day basis. But even that original vision, 20 years later, is not for me. I think we probably all learned that there's this I Heart Huckabees movie where the one of the female leads in that, there's a scene where they're all having like these weird existential crises and these strange philosophical evolutions in the show. And she starts as like this beautiful, regular woman, and she becomes this like crazy, well, she's correct about a lot of things. She's having a philosophical breakdown. There's this one point where she's facing her husband and he's in a room, I think, but there's glass there, and she slams her fists up against the window and she goes, "There's glass between us. There's glass between us." And that's how I feel about these phones. I feel like that it's the virtual approximation of relationships, and you miss all of these important things when you're not in person with the people that you love. And some amount of virtual life is very beneficial and useful, and there's like a utility to it, but it's not a replacement. And the more that we build to replace it, I don't even think it's going to work, is the thing. At the end of the day, I'm not that afraid of the dystopian vision, because I think that people are pretty clearly and roundly rejecting this idea again and again and again. The only reason they're spending as much time on their phones as they currently are is because we are addicted to them. Yeah. We're addicted to those algorithms, man. We're addicted to the swiping and that weird dopamine hit that you get. And you have to do all these hacks to like keep your phone away from you because, we're stuck on this shit. It's a path of darkness. And I think Mark's in this tricky place where he probably understands this all on some level, but he went all in on this particular type of technology. And at this point, I kind of no longer even really know what the value proposition is for this stuff. What is the utopian vision of Facebook, Instagram? To Twitter, I understood actually more previously, and maybe Threads is what they're doing now. It's like, but they're not even doing news on Threads. So if you have to have a news feed, or you want a news feed, that's what Twitter was. It was a different kind of newsstand, and I kind of understood that. That's completely collapsed post Elon because it's the proliferation of links and a million other things. But I guess, anyway, I'm rambling at this point. I don't know what the value prop is for any of this stuff anymore. And I don't think that they know either.
I think my cynical view of the internet is that it's just based at this point, the main value is like distributing propaganda, advertising, and state surveillance. I think, right? I actually don't see it. I mean, because the connection part, I'm not even sure that connection is higher quality now than it was before we had text messaging. I think you make more contact with more people more frequently, but previous to text messaging, you had to call somebody or you had to hang out with them. And now you don't. I'm actually afraid of phone calls. Like somebody calls me, I'm like, oh no, like, oh my God, like
something happened. Yeah.
Like am I ready for this? Can I take this right now? I deny calls 99% of the time, even from my friends, because I'm like scared of them or something now. And I'm like a millennial, like I'm an elder millennial. Like I grew up having phone calls, going to coffee with people, stuff like that.
It feels too intimate or something.
Yeah.
I'll say your point was interesting when you're talking about like I keep my phone on do not disturb all the time as well, right? So I'm the same guy. Yep. But like I think about that the same way I think about the Apple Watch. I'm like, I don't need another thing dinging and pinging all day. Like I like more traditional mechanical watches, but like I don't need another piece of tech that's like living with me and reminding me about things all the time. Like the phone's fine. We're all addicted to it because we obviously live on Twitter and Slack all day. But like I agree that the tech is really impressive, but while Super you were breaking it down, Brandon, I kind of had like the same sort of like conclusion of like, do I want more things on me? I actually want less things on me.
There are some things that are just super magical, and being able to push a button and get a car, being able to raise up your phone and know what music is playing, and then be able to download it, not even download it, just access it immediately via your music app. I think that then I think the communication stuff all is really valuable. It's incredible to be able to access anybody on the planet instantaneously, but also be doing your banking. And I mean, there are any number of things that are, the banking one also is one where I have a hard time even understanding the negative. It seems very positive that you're able to have this kind of access to your banking. And
awesome.
With communication also, that is a positive. It's just, there's also a negative associated with it, or just concurrently operating alongside of it. The positive is you have access now to anybody at any time. And then the negative is that you can't escape this ever. And that is, it's like the genie in Aladdin, right? Where it's like all of this cosmic power, itty bitty living space is kind of how it feels. It feels a little cramped in here right now. And I think we're all feeling that itch of the negative here and kind of wanting some freedom from that. And so I think that these technologies just aren't going to work. And I don't know what the next crop is that works. I'm excited for them, but it's going to be something I think that's more human and that makes us feel good. We don't think a lot about what apps make you feel good. Like I don't feel good after I'm done using Twitter. I never did. I feel probably worse now, as I'm scrolling through that app. Instagram, certainly. I never, ever, there is no minute that I've spent on Instagram that I don't regret. Truly. YouTube a little better because I can watch my cooking videos.
YouTube's great.
YouTube's fun.
But I think
TV, it's not the same as like, not like social.
Honestly, it might be my banking app at this point. That's a good point.
Yeah, I'll have to look at
That's a really good app. I can transfer money really quickly between accounts.
Yeah, I feel good about my banking app. I feel good about being able to pay my bills immediately, see what I'm spending and how I'm spending. I like Robinhood. Yeah, I like all the things that give me shit that help me that help me grow my wealth. I'm interested in those things. I want stuff that improves my life, which is maybe that's like a trite maybe way to approach it. But where is that focus? Like, make my life better. And if you're not making my life better with your little app or your dumb goggles, you're fucking out.
Amazon's fun.
Love Amazon.
Uber's still good.
Amazon is another great example. Like, Amazon makes my life better. Thank you, Amazon. And I don't care about the fact that they're killing competition or whatever. Over it. I like Amazon. I like that it makes my life better. I'm the consumer. That's what matters.
That's awesome.
We could talk about the productivity aspect of some of this tech, which I think is cool and useful, and I'm not bearish about. The notion of being able to control a device with your thoughts, I think could lead to some incredible productivity unlocks, especially if that device has AI, right? Like, and I think in certain contexts, of course, this is a good thing, being a writer, right? Like, what's going on, Solana?
I saw a meme that was like, it was the year 2030 or something, and I had a racist thought, and my Neuralink transitor killed me. Like, it's like my brain exploded or something. Like, when we're talking about such imperfect technology and then further integrating it into our brain, I am a little weary. I love curing the blind. in being delivered ads while I sleep, I am not as excited about that.
That'd be crazy if you could engineer dreams for advertisers.
Well, that you'd have to pay, right? So it's like, hey, I'm gonna give you the access to have the most fucking epic dreams of your life, and there's gonna be a little advertisement spot, you know,
little athletic greens.
Like you have to pay to not have advertisements in your dream. It's like default, you get ads.
I'd pay for that.
I mean, listen, we're projecting current technology onto future technology that we don't even really know what that is going to be like, and so it seems a little dystopian. I think the truth is it's going to be a whole other bag of really cool things plus negative externalities, and it's always a mix of some. And again, fundamentally very excited about curing blindness. Thank you, Elon. But bring back links on Twitter, please. Cards Against Humanity, and then we're going to get to our Polymarket segment. We got to pick up the pace here. We got to get to idle. Riley, tell me about this trash game and their trash political behavior, and I don't know. Break down the story for us.
Let's do it. So back in 2017, Cards Against Humanity purchased a plot of land near the U.S.-Mexico border. I guess through like crowdfunding that they got their fans to like chip into. They did this as a troll, apparently, thinking it was their way to stop Trump from building the wall. Sick prank. Now, instead of sticking it to Trump, they have pivoted to trying to stick it to Elon, suing SpaceX, who is also obviously down there in South Texas, for allegedly trespassing on their land, using it to store vehicles and construction materials, things like that. Cards Against Humanity also said in the lawsuit that its, quote, business relationships have been damaged as a result of being associated with Elon like this. On account of the fact that Elon's been accused of racism and sexism by former employees. Here's the thing, aside from the fact that the game has cards like Auschwitz that it's like trying to use as jokes, Cards Against Humanity themselves have been accused of racism and sexism by former workers, so much so that in 2020, their co-founder had to step down. So don't throw stones at houses of cards, I guess. This is clearly an attempt from Cards Against Humanity to get more brownie points among their very Reddit fan base. Meanwhile, Elon announced this week that SpaceX would be sending crewed missions to Mars in 2028. So story of two companies right there.
Which is so sick, by the way, the Mars thing, just casually stated. And the way that our news cycle works, I mean, you barely hear about it, but I think maybe part of that is I'm still waiting to hear more of the details on it, to be honest. I find it hard to believe in this political climate you're going to be able to get to some kind of consensus necessary to send people to Mars via SpaceX. He's just politicized himself so much. He's going to have Democratic pushback no matter what. We'll see. But I'm excited about the vision, certainly, and I hope that it plays out. On the Cards of Humanity side, I don't even know what to say, really, other than shut up.
People have Elon derangement syndrome. Is that coined? Yes. Is that term coined yet? Elon derangement syndrome. It's the same exact thing as Trump.
It's popping up.
I've been using EDS for a long time.
People have EDS.
ZDS, EDS, more so than TDS. TDS, I'm like people hated he's the running, but the EDS has been powerful.
It's the same. The same people have TDS have EDS too, but it's the same exact behavior, same exact reaction. Like you can't say his name. If you say his name, something like shorts out in their head. They'll say something. They'll say like he's a Nazi or something really quickly. You talk to people with EDS.
Yeah,
I can't let the subject pass without saying, like, since I'm in a room with some elder millennials, were you guys forced to play that stupid ass game Cards Against Humanity growing up like 10, 15 years ago?
Was it that long? I definitely played
it. Was that long ago?
Yeah.
Oh my god, that game fucking sucked. It was so annoying. I had so many fucking events I had to play that stupid ass game. I hate it so much.
Well, the joke's always, it's one joke. The joke
it's like 20-year-old jokes.
Is like, tell me your favorite TV game, and then someone's like, like you said, Auschwitz or something. And it's like, oh my god, it's funny because it's crazy, and that's the joke. That's the one beat. I want to move on. We got to get to our Polymarket segment. So we have a bunch of segments here. We're running out of time. One of them was about Kamala, her first TV interview with a woman who works for MSNBC, who a week ago said how much she was just going to vote for basically Kamala no matter what. I mean, she didn't implicitly say or explicitly say that, but she sort of implicitly argued. It's very obvious what side of this that she is on. But this sort of leads us into the question of this upcoming vice presidential debate. So welcome to our Polymarket segment. Thank you, Polymarket, for supporting Pirate Wires. This is a paid partnership. We could not do it without you. And here is what we're going to do. We're going to talk about this VP debate. So let's consult the betting markets. There is some interesting stuff going on over there. And I think we get a kind of interesting insight into what's going on with really not Waltz so much, so though this is really all about him, but JD Vance. So the first and likely only vice presidential debate is scheduled for Tuesday, October 1st on CBS. According to Polymarket, Waltz currently has a 78% chance of winning based on post-debate polls. These odds likely reflect the market's acknowledgement of a historical trend. Debate polls tend to skew left. Nevertheless, this debate undoubtedly marks a crucial moment in Vance's young career, putting his likability to the test. That's an overwhelming number, or that's an overwhelming read of the two, and I think it's correct roughly. I think that in terms of likability strictly, I think JD Vance is so unknown to begin with, and he was co-opted as a meme so early that it's going to be really hard for him in this debate to come out. I think Victor, obviously impossible according to the mainstream media. In general, with debates, people who are voting for Trump are going to say that JD won. People who are voting for Kamala are going to say that Waltz won. But in terms of like that rare, elusive, undecided voter, who do you like more? Waltz is a charming, likable guy if you don't know what his politics are. If you have never heard him talk about BLM or 2020 and you don't know anything about how he ran Minnesota, he seems like a nice guy. And JD is an intellectual. That's automatically sort of a hard thing to sell to an American. And he's, what we know about him is basically coming from the media that's cast him as weird. And they did that very effectively. And so I think that he's going to have a rough time of it. What do you guys make of it?
Yeah, I mean, JD's known for being like an extremely good debater, but I don't know what he could say that would not prompt the left to just flood the internet with a bunch of couch memes after the fact. Like that's going to happen regardless. No matter what JD says, no matter how much he eviscerates Tim Waltz, that's going to happen regardless. So yeah, I kind of agree with you.
I mean, also like debates don't matter generally, and vice presidential debates really don't matter. And so who's even like the people who go into this are people who just love politics, the people who are watching it and caring about it and waiting to see what happens. And I think that I think that I think that JD is very good and probably will win in terms of like who made the best points and who really showed that the other person was wrong about stuff or whatever. But ultimately, this is just like a popularity contest that doesn't matter, and it's stacked in Waltz's favor.
I don't think it's going to matter at all. I mean, I think the Democrats have done their a pretty effective groundwork at making JD Vance seem like a crazy MAGA guy with the couch memes, now the cat stuff, and
what do the couch memes have to do with being a crazy MAGA guy? The couch meme, by the way, for people who don't know, the meme is that he literally fucks. He's a couch fucker. He has a fetish for having sex with couches. This is the misinformation that came before the cat memes, of course, that the Democrats thought was hilarious. Waltz himself espousing this again and again and again, this idea that JD Vance has a sexual relationship with couches, which is so weird that, not that obviously to be into couches is weird, but to say that about someone is just like kind of goofy. And this makes me think that I'm just out of touch a little bit with American society. I'm like, this is not a funny joke to me. This is just it's like goofball-y. I'm not opposed to it though. I was slightly not on the side of the internet really came down hard on the Democrats for that. And I sort of thought it was all in good fun. And then the cat memes began and the Democrats were like, how fucking dare you? And it was hard for me to take them seriously as well.
I tweeted something about this kind of, and I said something like, a lot of times misinformation is actually just the partisan rendering of information. And so, I mean, it's perfectly illustrated by the fact that I agree, the couch fucking meme was funny. I thought it was great. But then, when it got turned around and we had the cat cooking meme or cat eating meme, it suddenly became misinformation. It was like, no, those two things are the same thing. And it's just like partisan humor.
Yeah, it's like they become incapable. The media becomes incapable of understanding humor or attempts at humor when one side is in play. But I don't know. We're getting
but I, real quick, I just want that's what I like from the results of all that. again, I get like the filtering from like my Democrat side. They're like, this guy JD Vance is crazy, and so like it works. Like they all think it's crazy.
Yeah.
So that's why I don't think it's going to matter much.
We got to move on. It is time for the quarterfinals. And we are back to the greatest show on the internet. It's Pirate Idol. Accept no substitutions. The quarterfinals are upon us. We have 3 congrats just straight away for Jesse, Patrick, and Kartik. You guys made it through. The crowd went wild. They wanted more. You're here to deliver. But first, maybe just a quick note before we get into the takes today and the topics. A quick note on everybody else who made it through. Matt, a little music, please. We've got from week 1, Kartik, Jesse, and Grant are all going to be returning. Week 2, we've got Molly, Patrick, and Rob. Week 3, we have Andy and Chris. Week 4, Olivia made it through the cut. Week 5, we've got Miles, Jack, and Kevin. So the way that this is going to go moving forward, we're going to do 3 guests a week for 4 more weeks and do really just like one more crack at the original format. Now that you guys know how it works, now that the viewers have gotten used to this and listeners have gotten used to this, we're going to do just like, standard round, another wave. After that, we'll have two people on a week to do 2 segments, which will be led by contestants. And then in the end, we'll do 4 more. There'll be like a final 4. And we'll do full-on co-host spots. And that's the show, and that's going to take us. That's the fall, baby. And it's going to be Pirate Idol ratings through the roof. We've got to get actually Stuart, who runs our ads. He's got to talk to Polymarket. He's got some friends over there, and what I want from Polymarket is I want a top 12. I want to get a betting market for Pirate Idol. I would say it's essential, but that's enough talk about how the show is going to work. Let's get into the show. Riley, are you teed up for the topic this week?
Yes, sir.
I'll just give you the 2-second version of it. It's drugs in tech. Riley, take it away.
Let's do it. So this week, a video went viral on X purporting to show people who had just done ayahuasca vomiting and losing consciousness while locals attempted to care for them. Though these people were apparently reacting to a frog venom and not ayahuasca, according to a community note, it did, however, prompt a wider discussion about ayahuasca and psychedelics more broadly, with some touting their benefits and others relaying stories about people leaving their jobs and family after consuming the drugs.
I'm going to let Kartik take this one away at the top of this round because you went last, I believe, in the first one. All right, man. Welcome back to the show. Also, before you get started, Kartik, I know for everyone who saw the Pirate Wire's voting guide or voter guide. It's a voter guide for people who are not insane. Kartik was the partner in crime for us on this one. He got plenty of hate with us in the DMs from angry local political people who, it was crazy actually this year how everyone just was really like either elated that we included them in the guide or furious that we didn't. In fact, there was, I don't know if I should say this out loud, but I will. There was someone in local politics tried to gin up the standard to write a hit piece about, well, let's not say a hit piece, a piece of media criticism on how the Pirate Wire's voter guide was put together. I think there was some anger that we didn't talk to all of the candidates first. I didn't realize that they were going to be so butthurt for not being included. And if I did, I would have definitely reached out next time, guys. Give me a shout. But Kartik, thanks for that. And welcome back. If you have any thoughts about that, you can share them. But if not, let's get into drugs.
No, I think it's great. But let's get into drugs. So Riley, you mentioned it's a frog venom. I want to be very specific. It is a giant monkey frog venom, which makes it more fun, called Combo. And I actually want to talk about that more than ayahuasca. We can jump into that too, but obviously that's what these people were doing in this video, and they paid to go do that, and I think they got what they asked for. This is what you do with it. You burn yourself with a hot stick, okay? Then you get blisters. You scrape them off, and then put the giant monkey frog venom on the lesions. And so that's how you do this drug. It's pretty insane. And so the reason they do it, there's a couple benefits, and these might sound familiar. So basically, you improve your clarity, you have increased energy, it reduces all the stress you have, and as a bonus, you get +1 luck and +2 hunting. So it's a pretty cool drug, actually. And I mean, of course it works. If you burn yourself and survive, you're not going to be stressed about a PowerPoint presentation you have to do the next day. And the way I think about it is, this is basically like cold plunge for men. You know, like if you want to get in and shock the system and get back to it, you know, fuck a cold plunge. Just go do combo, you know? And honestly, if anyone here is listening and you want to start a combo clinic in Wynwood, which I think would be the perfect location for this, let me know. And if there's a frog token or something else that I can get the guys at SGV excited about, we would seriously love to invest in this. I'm your first check.
I am just unprepared for this, I guess. This is the first I'm hearing that it was even was frog venom. And then as Riley, you were first saying it, I assumed what you meant was like someone was trying to do ayahuasca and then they were, I don't know, bit by a poisonous frog or something, and that's why they were puking. And now you're telling me that they are actually doing frog venom on purpose. I guess what I'm wondering is why the obfuscation? You know, why is it that people wanted to go after? Because clearly what this says to me then is that the people talking about this weren't interested in the truth. They wanted to go after ayahuasca in particular. Is it just because ayahuasca has more cachet and someone who's doing frog venom is just obviously stupid, or what is it?
Yeah, I think ayahuasca, like, people know what it is, right? I just had to describe what combo is, so that's kind of boring. Also, it's just hilarious, like the reactions people had to it. And I think it's just more relevant in tech, Fin, Twitter, like the people who are talking about this. So I think they just were looking to make a joke and want to talk about ayahuasca.
I'm looking for something more insidious, though. I'm looking for more insidious motive. I just don't, to me, it's not, so in terms of a joke, the fact that these guys are going into the jungle and doing frog venom is, I can make fun of that. I know how to make fun of it. That's funny. That's like a really stupid thing to do, and I can make fun of that. It's not any less funny than ayahuasca. Ayahuasca is, I mean, I guess I saw the meme over and over and over again. It's the same thing. Every time something about ayahuasca comes up, you've seen the new sort of trad Twitter thing happening. I've seen people say something, it's like, you know, fact, or point, and then it concludes with, to have your mind rearranged by a 6D demon or something. That's kind of roughly the construction of the anti-ayahuasca take, is like you have gone into the jungle and you've let a demon enter your body. Jesse, what do you think?
I have a hot take for you, a real take, and then time permitting, a little bit of a funny story or antidote from my attempts at reporting on this earlier today. So my hot take plays off of Solana, your commentary around like the drug piece. This to me just seems like a little bit of a remix of the don't do drugs moral panic. And I just don't know why we care. Like, I personally do not care if somebody wants to partake in drug tourism. I don't care if they want to go do ayahuasca. And so I thought it was interesting that somebody thought to tweet this and that it like took off, right? So the guy who said 8 out of 8 CEOs he knows,
Austin.
Austin Alred, they've quit from doing this. So I thought that piece was actually one of the most interesting, was digging in there. And if you follow his kind of line and commentary, he comes out saying only 4 of the 8 are happy with their decision. No one really jumped in on that, which I'm like, that seems like a more interesting story to me. And really leads me into, you know, my real take, which I then was thinking of how many CEOs have done ayahuasca and loved it and had their companies better off for it, right?
When I saw that, the CEO thing, that because this is I don't know if Austin even started it, but he definitely said it, and then it was like Andreessen commented on this. Yeah, I believe it. Oh, you know who else it was? It was Ashley Vance. Not Ashley. Was it Ashley Vance?
Yeah, it was Ashley Vance, and it made the Indian Times.
There's a story online that like this drug takes founders and destroys them, and my perspective as someone who's running a company and is surrounded by people who are running companies, I'm dating someone who's running a company, it's an insane grind. And what you're not doing when you have a startup is taking time off to go to the jungle to have a religious experience with a drug. And if you're making that decision to go and do that as a CEO, I have no doubt that CEOs have done it. But my perspective on those people is if you're going off to do that, you've already checked out of your company to a certain degree. There's a difference between, I think, being the CEO of a larger company post IPO or something and a startup. If you're a startup founder and you've not yet hit like the crazy levels of success, there's no time to do that. And if you are making time to do that, it's because you're looking for something to take you out of the game, and it's not the drugs that are doing it. You did it by choosing them to begin with. And I just have I have a hard time believing it's like some magical thing or some chemical thing that makes you not a founder anymore.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, it's just truth seeking, right? Like, if you probably want to quit your company if you're going on a vacation. I mean, you could have just gone to France, but instead you decided to do this drug. Either way, you realize like you're stressed out and you don't do it anymore, right? So you quit. I think it just makes sense. And I think for people, like you said, like, okay, 5 of my friends quit their companies, they're probably their friends and they probably thought those companies were great. And like, maybe it's a projection. Like, I wish they were making their company and they're not anymore, so I'm sad about it. Or maybe something terrible happened. I don't want to be, I don't know these people, so I don't want to judge them. But yeah, probably they just did what they wanted to.
The only way to really prove it out is you need a different kind of experiment here. I think you have to actually force a bunch of founders to do the drug. So if you get them together at some kind of like CEO summit, or let's say like TechCrunch Disrupt, and you just spike the punch with ayahuasca or whatever, and come back in a couple of days and see how many of them are still running companies, that's information that for me is more interesting. But until then, and in terms of also like the idea of like, do we care about the drug? I have a philosophy on this with drugs in general, which is like, I do not care until it becomes my problem. Now, if you're outside shitting on my front curb, I want to know what drug is responsible for that. And I have a problem with that drug. But if you are just dropping out of society, but you can still pay your bills and whatever, then it's like, I have a hard time seeing the difference between that and between like, let's say like weed use or something, which is also being weirdly lumped in. I see this I don't smoke weed, haven't smoked weed since I was a kid, makes me crazy. I don't recommend smoking weed, but when people do smoke weed, what do I think about it? Like nothing at all. Alcohol seems just as toxic to me, if not worse. And so does, honestly, excessive smartphone use. I see people scrolling away their lives on Instagram and shit. Like that's something that we're gonna have to address eventually. But it's like, my bias still just be like addressing it on the individual level. It's still like, it's your body, it's your choice.
The piece that you had said about like putting people and making them do it, like that was one of the comments that I had, was around like how many CEOs have done this and not quit their jobs. Like, I think that would have been a more interesting piece of the thread, but I couldn't find that.
Right. And who are they? And of course, they're not incentivized to talk about it. Like what at this point, you're creating this anti-drug narrative, and you have you have investors who are saying, this is terrible, you're bad for doing it. That's now, which is fine. I understand that. And I actually understand that perspective. And I think it's a perfectly reasonable perspective. I slightly disagree, but not even entirely. But of course, also now you've created this anti-drug discourse, and these people are nervous to be seen as someone who's not a serious founder because they, once tripped balls in the desert at Burning Man.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And there actually are, if I was looking up, there's entrepreneurs who are like very pro ayahuasca and like take people. But my real take here was that the danger ayahuasca poses is actually the fact that it could be like a major disruptor to big pharma. There's just the need for alternative forms of medication. Like, I don't think we've solved healthcare in the US. Drug prices are really high. And why are people going to do this? I think they're looking for alternative forms. So we have a huge mental health care crisis. Could ayahuasca help lower the burden on our emergency rooms right now? There is a ton of research that it helps a lot with addiction issues. Ayahuasca is being used to treat PTSD. I have a close friend who shared with me today that ayahuasca helped them recover from mold toxicity. So I think, there's a lot of uses there. And maybe another interesting pivot of the story is the impact on pharma.
I wonder, we don't know the truth of any of that stuff. And I also, people maybe, who knows what it can and can't do, and who knows what like psilocybin can and can't do. But I agree that it's interesting that there's this aversion to trying new, easier to access tools, I would say. I have a problem with the over-medication of people in general, and I would include these kinds of drugs in that. This idea that you need you need to like take things to fix yourself. Probably in many cases, certainly in many cases you do, but I think we're just like a little bit over-medicated in general. I guess my last thought on the difference between these drugs, I'm wondering about the difference between the psychedelics and amphetamines. I saw in the conversation on this, another recurring theme, which is the real problem is psychedelics, and we should be all sort of more down with amphetamine use because one of them is more productive and one of them is anti-productive. And to go back to my original point about one of my original points on what class of drug bothers me is when a guy is shitting outside of my apartment on the curb. That's meth. It's fentanyl or meth. And meth is an amphetamine. And it seems to me that amphetamine use has huge negative externalities, including, I think, probably most of the coarseness in our discourse is coming from like these legal meth Adderall freaks who are working in media, taking this drug every single day of their life, and they're just agitated and angry, and they're being mean to people online. And I do think that has like this slow, like degrading effect on our society in a way that smoking a J, I really don't think. My sense, not as bad for society. Patrick, what do you think?
Last time I was on the podcast, people were hyping up Scientology, and now you're hyping up Mormonism. So I'm just kind of confused which cult I should join.
Well, I'm pro Scientology.
I am too. I would never say anything bad about Scientology.
Yeah, I would never ever speak ill of Scientology. Yeah. But I believe that the faith of the discourse, the faith du jour of the discourse, is maybe perhaps Mormonism quietly.
Yeah, so personally, I'm in the pro amphetamine category in this very moment because I haven't slept in 30 hours. I just flew to Poland. Unfortunately, I don't have Adderall. But in terms of real takes, actually, no, another thing before I real take is the experiment idea is actually really good. I think we have a historical opportunity to do the first like double blind clinical trial in the Amazon jungle with shamans instead of big pharma running clinical trial in Boston or at Mayo Clinic or whatever. Honestly, though, my real take here is I think culture and society has a tendency to overshoot on any new thing. And obviously psychedelics are not new, but like culturally, they're coming back into the zeitgeist. And, I've definitely seen people that it's helped, but I will say that the cases where the outcome of doing a lot of psychedelics was obvious was asymmetrically to the downside. Like I know people whose lives were just completely ruined by it. Like I know a founder who I'm not going to name him, but he was posting on Facebook for, a year manically about how, he was meeting the machine elves or the entities, and they asked him to come back as the reincarnation of Christ, but he denied the mantle of responsibility, and he's returning to just being a human. I have another friend who, no bullshit, is dead now because of psychedelics. And I knew him for 7 years. He was one of the first people I ever met when I moved to San Francisco. He was one of my closest friends, and watched him get hollowed out over 7 years. Just like every single progressive iteration, his eyes getting a little bit more hollow. I think that these drugs kind of have some permanent effects, positive or negative, or positive and negative. Right? Like, you can look this up medically. There's, I forget the name of it. It's like persistent hallucinogenic disorder or something. Andrew Callahan from Channel 5 has it because he did too many shrooms when he was like 12, where you just like see snow and like permanent fractals and stuff. And, in my friend's case, who's passed away, just became extraordinarily emotionally sensitive in the same way that like if you're tripping on a psychedelic and you become super sensitive to your environment, you keep a part of that with you to the point where you live in an echo chamber. You can't take any outside advice or feedback. You are like putting up a larger and larger bubble around you. And I think in San Francisco, especially, the overshot effect is kind of real. Like, as I think back to his case, there was just too much collective reinforcement. It was very hard and unpopular to go to someone like that and deny that they were, growing and becoming a better person. And that's, I think, the other dangerous thing about the category of drugs is you never see people who are fit heads or crack heads or meth heads who are like, Finn has been amazing for me. It's reduced my anxiety. I had horrible back pain, and the opiate in it, has just been so amazing, life-changing for me. Like we accept individually and at the societal level that these drugs are just really bad for you. For psychedelics, it's obviously much more nuanced, much more neutral. Like it absolutely has helped a lot of people. Obviously we're seeing this play out now with ketamine clinics to help people with depression and PTSD and things like that. But, it's also encouraged this kind of cottage industry of like quote unquote experts with very questionable credentials who are just always arguing that, any problem it can fix without really further elaboration. And I would say like in the years that I lived in San Francisco, there were probably like half a dozen people who I had to pull aside at some point one-on-one because, their friends were encouraging them to do drugs to overcome their anxiety or, their manic disorders, in some cases, very serious psychiatric disorders. And I had to tell them like, hey, you should actually be really careful with this. So I'll stop ranting, but my take's a little bit more nuanced on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, don't do drugs, kids. I do think that we should, we maybe do need a little bit of a disclaimer there. I don't recommend it. I think it's like, there's a huge difference, obviously, between becoming a chronic user of something and going on a journey once to the jungle to try a drug that I think it's worth poking a little more at what is driving the conflation of the two. And I think it's maybe there are people who believe it's not possible for us to just have a little bit of the drug. It's like either you tolerate it, and if you tolerate it at all, you sort of implicitly tolerate abuse of the drug. And then there are people who are able to do it a little bit themselves, and they feel, I think correctly, like, well, their rights are being threatened. Their rights to use something that they think they have no problem with using are being threatened. And maybe they have had these benefits. Plenty of people have experienced, obviously, there are people who've been really hurt by these things, and there are people who've expressed like, my life has been changed for the dramatically better because of this or that, whatever the drug is.
Something that Jesse said that stuck out to me was how a lot of founders wouldn't want to admit to doing ayahuasca, because there still is that thing, if you do it, you're like the ayahuasca guy. So like the comparison I can make is like my GOAT, Aaron Rodgers, who plays quarterback for my team, the New York Jets, he took ayahuasca. And now everywhere he goes, he's the ayahuasca guy. It's like, what, you take ayahuasca in the off season? You're like, okay, we fucking get it. He did ayahuasca once. So like, there is that connotation. And then like, I've had some friends, and then again, similar to Patrick, I've had like people who've done good experiences, bad experiences, but like, I'm cautious about doing it because like, am I gonna be the bad one? Am I gonna be the guy who gets lost at sea and I'm just like hollowed out? I don't know. So it scares the shit out of me.
It's different in sports than tech, because in tech, you have a tradition of drug use associated with doing well within tech. And that all comes back on Steve Jobs, who very famously did a bunch of acid and talked about it as one of the reasons that he was better than Bill Gates. He advised Bill Gates to go trip. And that, I think, became really a part of the culture to a certain extent. I wouldn't say doing the drugs became a part of the culture, but I do know many people who have, and obviously that story is important to them. But also Burning Man is a huge part of tech culture, and Burning Man drug use is very much a part of that experience. And so it is kind of linked up. And in a way, I think it's, it's interesting to push back against that, because what was really happening with the investors who were like, hey, these founders have destroyed themselves by doing ayahuasca, is they're pushing back against this interesting kind of cultural thing that had sprung up inside of the industry. I just think that there's always a question of what is weird and what is not. And culture is changing so fast that I'm not actually sure what side of this debate is the weird side. Is it like the drug side, or is it the anti-drug side? Like, which one of them is the radical side? And I just want to always keep space for weirdos. And
yeah, I mean, for better or worse, like in San Francisco, ayahuasca is quite pedestrian. You're never going to be like, oh my God, like you tried ayahuasca. You know what I mean? Like that can't be cool in San Francisco or lame. Like it's just a thing that everybody does or everyone has tried. Personally, like, I haven't tried any of this stuff. I think, like you were saying, Solana, life is pretty good. I don't need a revelation. So I've talked to the Mind Bloom founder about ketamine. I have friends who've done it. It's like, you're always curious, but it's like, I don't want to break my brain or whatever. And I'm not doing any soul searching. So why risk it? I mean, if anything, that founder talks about all the great things that have happened, like, for his family, for himself. And so, you hear all these great stories. That's why Mind Bloom is pretty normal now. You can go online and order it and, try some ketamine. And I think it's a great form of therapy if other things aren't working for you. it would almost be funny is like, did that even come up in this discourse? Like, instead of it being versus big pharma, what if, Mind Bloom's out there, ayahuasca sounds fun. It's our cool competitor. You get to go on a trip. We'd rather you order ketamine to your house. I don't know.
Yeah, I can add into the Solana, your don't do drugs comment. I have some advice from an unnamed sister of mine. I have quite a few, so it's not giving it away. But I sent out a text being like, hey, have you done ayahuasca? Because I thought, 50-50 shot. And she hasn't. And her reasoning I thought was pretty good. I heard you only need it if you're not connected to the spiritual realms. Like, I'm already connected. I don't need it. So,
well, you also have to.
Instead.
So I know a bit about ayahuasca because before tech, I worked at an imprint called Tarcher, and we publish a lot of weird, esoteric, like magic-y kind of wooey type books. And ayahuasca was a huge deal among those people. Like, before I learned about the Burning Man crowd, they cared a lot about it. You have to go to, I believe it's Peru, and I'm pretty sure it's Peru, but there's a certain kind of shaman that you're supposed to do this with, and it's like a whole spiritual thing. It's not just like let me experience, So when Carter, you said like, well, ayahuasca is, it's not that. It wouldn't be crazy to hear the word ayahuasca. Like, we have a frame of reference for it. It is unusual to meet someone who's done the whole type experience, but a lot more common is probably coke use, and that seems like way worse to me. To be like certainly like a regular user of coke in like clubs and stuff, and this stuff just flies under the radar because people don't talk about it.
I think that's kind of the ideal outcome. Is honestly people just don't talk about it. I mean, this is kind of to your point, Kardec, but like my ideal outcome is people use the drugs that they want, and it's like not their personality, or I guess on the inverse, it's not your personality to be against drugs. But I would definitely say that the people on the pro psychedelic side are much louder than the ones on the anti psychedelic. I don't think people really care that much. Like, I'm sure there's someone in Utah who's talking about the devil's lettuce still, and the harmful effects of marijuana, and they also probably don't like 6-dimensional Aztec machine elf demons or whatever. But I think people should just do it if they want to. They should just be careful. I honestly wouldn't even know how to navigate the whole like clinical side of psychedelics, because I know that's popping up, but like, where do these people get their certifications? Do they have like PhDs in ketaminology? I really don't know how that works.
Well, the certification for the ayahuasca journey is you're a shaman. You're an actual, you're a witch.
You're like born there. It's part of your like.
Some of the shamans I met are just like born and raised in like LA, and they like used to be a real estate agent, and now they're like spending 2 months a year in Peru, just making like $250,000 a year.
There's like there's a bougie ayahuasca clinic on Abbot Kinney in Venice in LA. Like, people just go to it, and it's all like yoga girls. They got yoga mats.
You're legally allowed. I think there's a carve out in America for there's some weird tribal carve out. If it's not ayahuasca, is it peyote?
I think it's peyote. Or what's the other one? What's the one that Miley Cyrus got caught doing?
Whatever the cactus one is, I think we have a carve out. Anyway, we're way over, guys. It's been real. Thanks for the drug talk. Rate, review, comment. Obviously, hop in the mentions. Tell me about your weird drug experiences. I would love to see that in the comments here. But more importantly, tell us who you want to hear more from. Jesse, Patrick, or Kardik. It's been absolutely real. I will see you in the ethereal realm. When I visit, I'm just going to get weird. I'm not doing it. Good night. Goodbye.